Hey guys, Nick Stoy with Stoy Wood Design, and thanks for tuning in to another episode here on my YouTube channel. I thought I'd start out this video just by saying I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy throughout these crazy times that we're living in. And I know it's safe to say that 2021 can't come soon enough for all of us. But in the meantime, hopefully you get some values out of these videos and it inspires you to want to get out there and create something like this yourself. So in this video, this is going to kick off our two-part series on how I constructed this red oak dining table for a customer here in the Indianapolis area. So make sure that you like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hit that bell icon so you know when the second video comes out. And with that said, let's get into this video, and I hope you enjoy. For this dining table, I had a variety of 8-quarter red oak boards at various widths, and I needed to get a flat edge before running them through my saw stop. So I started out at my 8-inch Laguna joiner. Funny story, I actually used the profit from this dining table to purchase this joiner, so really didn't make any money on this project, but was able to get a new tool in the shop. And I have to say, the ShearTech 2 cutting head, similar to like a helical head with 4 sides, really helped to give me a clean edge on this red oak, which is prone to tear out. As well, this 220-volt motor really helped to power through this thick lumber. And as I mentioned, with one edge flat, it was over to the saw stop to break these down to 8 inches wide so I could run the face back through my Laguna joiner. I did have one board that was 12 inches wide, so I ripped that in half and used that for the legs of the table. With my material broken down to its correct width, I headed over to my miter saw station to break it down to its approximate length. For the 8-foot tabletop, I decided to leave it about an inch long just to give me some play during the glue up. It was then back over to the joiner to begin squaring up my material. I started out with the legs and then moved on to the tabletop. And I have to call out that these 8-quarter, 8-foot red oak boards were one heck of a workout to push through the joiner. The joiner itself is 75 inches long, but it took everything I had to keep the face flat when I got towards the end of the boards. And right after this project, I went out and bought a Supermax rolling conveyor just so I could have something to help me support long material in the future. With both edges and one face square, it was over to the planer to break it down to its final thickness. And as you can see here, I did run into a bit of an issue while I was running my planer. I actually figured out I could not run my planer and dust collector at the same time without blowing a breaker. So to get around that, I would run my material through the planer, then turn the dust collector on and turn it back off after it sucked up the chips, and then move forward with running more material through the planer. And I repeated that process until I got everything broken down. And I can assure you, it took forever. With all my material at its final thickness, I can move on to laying out my domino placement. As you can see here, I set all of my tabletop boards onto some metal horsies, and I could not figure out why my boards were uneven, and I thought they were warping at one point, but then realized that each horsey had a handle in the middle of each, which was causing the wood to bump up and made it look uneven. But I can assure you they were all flat. Next, I used my Festool Domino joiner to create my mortises for my 10 by 50 millimeter tenons, which I would use for the tabletops and legs. And I have to admit, I know this tool is pricey, but it has 100% improved my woodworking in terms of the joints I make. Everything is even now. It assembles quite easily, as you'll see in the next photo when I go to glue up, and I can't speak highly enough about it. I also want to call out the Festool Domino has an indexing feature that allows you to set the width of your mortise that your tenon slides into. So for the end of my boards, on one side, I decided to set the index to its smallest setting, so there really wasn't any play for the tenon, just to ensure the ends of the boards lined up as closely as possible. And then for the rest of the mortises, I set those to the middle setting, so there would be a little bit of play for the tenon as I glued all my boards together. And with that, it was time to move on to the glue up. I started out by laying my Irwin clamps on the shop floor just to keep my lumber off the ground. I also picked up a Rockler glue application kit for this project and used the brush that came in the kit to apply my Titebond 3 to each board before gluing them together. Now, it did take some time. I want to say it was around 15 minutes to get everything together and clamped up, and I've compressed that into 30 seconds for your sanity. With the tabletop glue up complete, it was time to shift my focus to the legs for this project. I decided to sand all my material down to 120 grit sandpaper before assembly, just so I wouldn't have to worry about getting into the corners of the legs once they were glued together. For this build, the customer elected for a modern leg design. I was actually really happy about this because it allowed me to use my Festool Domino for some butt joinery. This was my first time using the Festool Domino for this type of joinery, and I started out by watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos. I'll try to find those and post some links in the description below for you. But the main takeaway here is that for these joints, it's all about the prep work. You want to make sure you set up the thickness, as you can see in the video here that I did with a pencil, and you also want to mark the face so that you know which sides need to be touching and they're in the right orientation. With the orientation of my material correct and the pieces clamped together, it was time to move on to cutting my mortises. As you can see here, I used the indexing pins on the Festool Domino just to ensure I was cutting my mortises in the same place every time. And one more quick tip for you, make sure you turn on your dust collection before you start drilling your mortises. It helps with the cleanup for sure. I won't lie here, the first time you flip your Festool Domino upside down, it is a little unsettling just because you know there's a spinning bit in there. But if you make sure your pieces are clamped together and you've got the back of the fence up against your material, there's nothing really to worry about. With my mortises cut, it was time to insert some dominoes and see how I did. I decided to set the detent for the Festool Domino to the medium setting just so I'd have a little play once I got these two dominoes in place. I'm glad I did, it just allowed me to sneak up on the fit and ensure each piece was flush. And here's a quick time lapse of me cutting the mortises for the final portion of this first table leg. Once complete, I inserted some dominoes and decided to put it together just to make sure everything lined up. And honestly, to my surprise, it did. With all my mortises cut, it was time to move on to the glue up. And luckily at this point I keep adding to my clamp collection. Don't know why, I just keep picking them up. But I now have 4 of these Irwin 48-inch clamps that I picked up from Menards. I'll leave a link in the description. So I grabbed my Titebond 3 and was able to glue up both tips. And I figure I better call myself out before someone else does in the comments, but I used way too much glue when I was putting these table legs together. But hey, it's my glue and I don't have to worry about these suckers coming apart in the future. And because I did use too much glue, I did have quite a bit of squeeze out once I got these suckers clamped together. But luckily, when I picked up that Rockler glue application kit, the back of the brush has a flat edge which allowed me to scrape the glue out perfectly. After letting the legs set up overnight, I came back and got them out of the clamps and took my Festool sander to all the edges to clean up any glue squeeze out as well as ensure everything was flush. After sanding down both table legs, I decided to go ahead and add a 45-degree chamfer on all edges of each leg just to prevent any chipping or tear out in the future. And I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It added an extra dimension that I hadn't thought about when I was planning this table build. And with that, this concludes part 1 of our red oak dining table build. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and ring that bell icon just so you don't miss part 2 when it comes out here in the near future. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below and I will get back to every single one of them. As always, my name is Nick Stoya with Stoya Wood Design and thank you for watching.